Welcome back to the deep dive. We have a massive stack of documents on the table today. Biographies, coroner reports, studio contracts, film archives. And honestly, looking at it all, I feel a heavy responsibility. We are unpacking a story that I think a lot of people feel like they know, but usually they only knew the ending. We're talking about Natalie Wood.
Natalie Wood. It is a name that instantly conjures up a very specific, very tragic set of images for most people.
It really does. And sadly, for the vast majority of the public, the first association isn't her acting technique. It isn't her record-breaking Oscar nominations or her business acumen.
No.
It's the water. It's the boat. It's the red down jacket. It is the mysterious circumstances of her death in 1981.
Which is, I mean, it's understandable given the unresolved nature of the case and the sheer cultural impact of that weekend.
Sure.
However, the mission for today's deep dive is to fundamentally shift that focus. We need to gently push that tragedy to the side for a moment, or at least to the end of the story where it chronologically belongs, and focus on the woman herself. Because when you actually dig into the source material, as we have done, pretty extensively, you realize that Natalie Wood was not just a victim of a dark Hollywood mystery. She was a pivotal architect of American cinema.
She really was the bridge, wasn't she? When I was looking at the timeline, it struck me. She spans old Hollywood, the rigid, glamorous studio system of the 40s and 50s.
Right, the contract player era.
And new Hollywood, the gritty, realistic, director-driven cinema of the 60s and 70s.
Precisely. And that is a bridge that very, very few actors cross successfully. I mean, think about her contemporaries from the child star era.
They vanished.
They either burned out, left the industry, or couldn't shake the cute kid persona. Natalie Wood didn't just survive the transition, she evolved. She was an icon in 3 different decades.
But getting there, oh man, it was not a smooth ride. We are talking about a Russian-American child star, a stage mother who makes Mama Rose look like a meditative yoga instructor.
That is not an exaggeration.
And a personal life that was just as dramatic, if not more so, than anything she put on screen.
There is a tension that runs through her entire life, a duality. On the surface, she had this clean, middle-class, perfect American image. She was the girl next door. But underneath, it was turbulent. It was often dark. And frankly, it was a fight for survival from the very beginning.
So let's go back to that beginning, because before she was Natalie Wood, the Hollywood darling, she was a little girl in San Francisco with a much more complex heritage.
That's right. She was born Natalia Nikolaevna Zakharenko in 1938.
Zakharenko. That is not exactly the name you see on a neon marquee in 1940s America.
No, and that heritage is crucial to understanding her psychology. She was of Russian and Ukrainian descent. Her parents were immigrants, but that word feels too gentle.
It does.
They weren't just moving for a change of scenery. They were fleeing immense turmoil. They were refugees of a violent revolution.
Her family history reads like a history textbook of the early 20th century. It's intense.
It is. Her paternal grandfather worked in a chocolate factory in Russia. But when the revolution broke out, he joined the anti-Bolshevik civilian forces.
Yeah.
He was actually killed in a street fight between the Red Army and the White Russian soldiers in Vladivostok.
Wow. That is a visceral image, to have that kind of political violence in your immediate lineage.
Yeah.
And her mother's side.
A bit wealthier, but a similar kind of trauma. Her maternal grandfather owned soap and candle factories. But when the Russian Civil War hit, they lost everything.
Everything.
They had to flee to China, settling in Harbin as refugees, living in this community of displaced Russians. Eventually, both sides of the family made their way to North America, carrying that trauma with them.
So you have this backdrop of displacement, of survival, of losing everything and starting over. The mindset must have been, we have to survive at all costs.
Yes.
And into this mix comes Natalie's mother, Maria Zudilova. And from everything I've read, Maria is a character that requires her own deep dive.
Maria, or Mud, as she was sometimes called in the family, is the driving force of the early Natalie Wood story.
Yeah.
And force might be an understatement.
Right.
She had what sources describe as an overpowering ambition. She was a frustrated artist herself, dreaming of a stardom that the revolution had stolen from her.
We see this pattern a lot with child stars, don't we? The parent projecting their unfulfilled dreams onto the child. It's almost a cliche, but here it seems dangerous.
Absolutely. Maria had been a would-be performer. She married Natalie's father, Nicholas, but the power dynamic was very clear. Maria was the captain of the ship.
She was in charge.
Totally. So when a director named Irving Pichel spotted a young Natalie in Santa Rosa, literally just saw her in a crowd during a film shoot, he saw potential. He told the mother, bring her to L.A. for a screen test.
And the father, Nicholas, was like, no way.
He was completely opposed. He wanted a normal life for them. He wanted his daughter to have a childhood. But Maria...
She saw an opportunity.
Oh, she packed up the whole family and moved them to Los Angeles. She wasn't going to let this ticket punch itself. She saw Natalie not just as a daughter, but as a vehicle for the family's salvation.
And then once they get to Hollywood, the machine starts working. First order of business, the identity. This is where the erasure happens.
Right. Zakharenko was too foreign for RKO executives. It was 1943. The country was at war. Xenophobia was real. They wanted something all-American, something crisp.
So they just picked a name.
Pretty much. Executives David Lewis and William Gutz decided to rename her. They chose Wood as a tribute to the director Sam Wood.
Just like that. You're 4 years old, and suddenly your name is a tribute to some guy you don't know.
Yeah.
Stripping away that Russian heritage to make her palatable for the masses, it's commodification 101.
It was the era of assimilation. You had to be the girl next door. And Natalie was very good at being what people wanted her to be. She learned early on that her job was to be pleasing, to be moldable.
But the cost of that compliance. I want to talk about the butterfly incident because this story, when I read it in the source material, it actually made my stomach turn.
It's awful.
It tells you everything you need to know about her childhood and her relationship with her mother.
It is a harrowing anecdote, and it serves as a central metaphor for her life. This was on the set of the film, Tomorrow is Forever. Natalie is about 7 years old.
Okay.
She's starring opposite Orson Welles and Claudette Colbert, huge stars.
And there's a scene where she needs to cry.
Correct. She plays a German orphan. The scene requires deep, hysterical tears. But Natalie was, a happy child on a movie set. She couldn't quite get the tears flowing on cue.
A pretty normal thing for a kid.
Right. So her mother, Maria, decided to help.
Help is doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
It is. Maria knew that Natalie had captured a butterfly on set.
Yeah.
She loved this butterfly. She was protecting it in a little jar.
Oh, no.
Maria asked for the butterfly. Natalie trusted her mother and handed it over. Maria then tore the butterfly to pieces right in front of the child's face.
She ripped a live butterfly apart to make her daughter cry for a movie scene.
And it worked. Natalie sobbed hysterically. The director got the shot.
That's monstrous.
It is, but think about the psychological conditioning there. It taught her that her genuine emotions were tools to be extracted. It taught her that the person she trusted most in the world would hurt her to get a result.
It's manipulation, plain and simple. But the industry rewarded it. That's the sick part. Orson Welles, the great Orson Welles, what did he say about her?
He called her a born professional. He said she was so good, she was terrifying.
Terrifying. That's a telling word choice.
It is. He noted that she didn't act from the script, she acted from the heart. And knowing what we know about how that heart was manipulated by her mother, that praise takes on a darker hue.
Of course.
She was known as one-take Natalie. Efficient, perfect, a director's dream. But inside, she was being conditioned to suppress her own needs for the sake of the production.
And she hits the big time with Miracle on 34th Street in 1947, which is ironic, right? She plays this cynical little girl, Susan Walker, who doesn't believe in Santa Claus and has to learn to be a child.
It mirrored her reality perfectly. She was a child who had been forced to mature at an accelerated rate. She was working full-time jobs while other kids were playing hopscotch.
Yeah.
In the movie, she's skeptical of magic because she's too practical. In real life, she was practical because she was the family breadwinner.
Speaking of being a breadwinner, she didn't really go to school, did she? I mean, how do you fit in algebra when you're on set 10 hours a day?
Not in the traditional sense, no. She was educated on set. California law required 3 hours of schooling a day for child actors.
Okay.
But this wasn't a classroom with peers. It was usually a corner of a soundstage with a tutor. Despite the lack of a formal classroom, though, she was brilliant.
She was.
She was a straight-A student. She excelled in arithmetic. Director Joseph Mankiewicz called her the smartest moppet he'd ever met.
Wow, but it must have felt isolating.
Incredibly. And here's the heartbreaking part. Natalie herself said she always felt guilty when the crew was waiting for her to finish her school hours. She knew that time was money.
She felt responsible for holding up production as a child.
As a child. As soon as she was done, she'd run back to the set. The set was her home. It was where she felt she belonged. but is also a place of immense pressure.
So she conquers childhood. She's a massive star. But then comes the hurdle that kills 90% of child star careers, puberty.
Right.
The awkward phase. The industry usually discards you the moment you get braces.
It is the child star curse. Audiences love you when you're cute and precocious. They often reject you when you start growing up and developing autonomy or, sexuality.
But Natalie Wood was one of the very, very few to stick the landing. And the pivot point seems to be 1955, Rebel Without a Cause.
This is the moment everything changes. She is 16 years old, she is transitioning to an ingenue, and she is cast opposite James Dean.
The symbol of teenage angst himself. And this wasn't just another assignment, right? This was different for her.
No. For the first time, Natalie wasn't just doing what her mother told her to do. This was the first script she read that she actively wanted to do.
So she fought for it.
She did. Her parents were actually opposed to it. They didn't like the subject matter, juvenile delinquency, police stations rebellion. It clashed with the perfect daughter brand.
But she saw something in it.
She saw herself. She later said, "Until then, I did what I was told." Rebel was her rebellion, both on screen and off. She identified with the character of Judy, a girl who feels misunderstood by her father, who is acting out for attention.
And it paid off. Big time.
The industry took notice. She earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress.
At 16, that creates a level of legitimacy that most child actors never, ever get.
It validated her as a serious actress.
Mm-hmm.
But even with that success, the studio system was a beast. We have to remember, in the 1950s, actors were contract players. She was under contract to Warner Bros., and they essentially owned her image.
They kept trying to shove her into these girlfriend roles, right? Just the pretty face next to the male lead.
Right. After Rebel, instead of giving her more gritty roles, they cast her opposite Tab Hunter in these, fluffy movies like The Burning Hills. Yep. They were trying to manufacture a teen idol box office couple.
And she wasn't having it.
She found it incredibly unsatisfying. She wanted substance. She wanted to stretch.
And when she refused roles, this is the part that blows my mind about the studio system.
They suspended her. That was how the system worked. You were an employee. If you didn't do the picture they assigned, you didn't get paid.
And you couldn't work anywhere else.
Exactly. You couldn't work anywhere else. She was suspended for over a year at one point.
That takes guts to stand up to the machine when you're barely out of high school and essentially go on strike.
It does. It shows that she wasn't just a puppet. She had an artistic vision for herself. And amidst this struggle, she takes on the role of Marjorie Morningstar in 1958.
Which feels very autobiographical in a way.
Extremely. She plays a Jewish girl in New York, struggling with the expectations of her family and her religious community versus her own desire for an identity as an actress.
It's the same story.
Replace Jewish girl in New York with Russian girl in Hollywood, and it is essentially Natalie's life. She was constantly code-switching between her home life and her public persona.
So she's fighting for respect, she's fighting for good roles, and then the 60s hit. And this is really the golden era for her. She enters what some call the tragedy trio.
The trilogy of tragics, as some fans call them. Splendor in the Grass, West Side Story, in Gypsy. But Splendor in the Grass in 1961 is really the artistic turning point.
This is where she proves she's a heavyweight.
This is where she works with Elia Kazan. Yeah. And Kazan. He's a complicated figure, a genius director, but controversial.
Right.
He was a master of psychological realism. And we have to remember, Natalie idolized Vivien Leigh in A Streetcar Named Desire. She wanted that kind of raw emotional power. Kazan was the director who could get it out of her.
But his methods, they were intimate and they were manipulative.
They were. Kazan was very perceptive. He saw past the polished good girl facade. He said he saw a desperate twinkle in her eyes.
Wow.
He knew she was in psychoanalysis, which was somewhat taboo at the time, and he decided to use it.
He used her therapy against her or for her.
Depending on how you look at it, both.
Yeah.
He utilized her vulnerability. There's a famous scene in Splendor, the hysteria scene in the bathtub. Deanie, her character, is having a complete breakdown. It is visceral. It is uncomfortable to watch.
And she didn't have formal method training like Marlon Brando or James Dean. She wasn't from the actor studio.
No, she was instinctual. But Kazan pushed her buttons. He used effective memory, triggering her real-life pains to produce the on-screen emotion.
So he was pulling from her actual trauma.
He basically broke her down to build the character up, and it worked. The performance is devastating.
It solidified her as an actress capable of deep neurotic complexity. She wasn't just the girlfriend anymore. She was a woman on the edge.
And then almost immediately, she pivots to West Side Story.
Maria.
Yeah.
One of the most famous roles in movie history.
And also one of the most controversial by modern standards. We have to address the casting.
Right. We have to address the elephant in the room. She was a Russian-American woman playing a Puerto Rican character.
And she was darkened with makeup. It was the norm of the time. Hollywood often treated ethnicity as a costume. But it stands out starkly today.
It really does?
And on top of that, there is the issue of the voice.
Wait, really? I think a lot of people assume that's her voice singing "I Feel Pretty."
No. That is the legendary Marni Nixon dubbing her singing voice.
The same woman who dubbed Audrey Hepburn in My Fair Lady.
The very same. Natalie recorded all the tracks. She worked tirelessly on the songs, believing her voice would be used. But the studio, wanting perfection, replaced them in post-production without telling her at first.
That has to be a massive blow to the ego. You do the work and they erase your voice.
It was. She felt betrayed. But despite the casting issues and the dubbing, the film is a masterpiece, and her performance anchors it.
It does.
And if you look at the themes, it connects right back to Rebel Without a Cause.
How so?
Both films deal with the restlessness of youth, the alienation, the violence bubbling under the surface of American society.
Yeah.
In Rebel, she's the girlfriend of the outcast. In West Side Story, she is the outcast, crossing racial lines for love. She became the face of that specific brand of 50s and early 60s yearning.
And the Academy noticed. By age 25, she had racked up 3 Oscar nominations: Rebel, Splendor, and Love with the Proper Stranger.
That was a historic achievement. She held the record for the youngest person to achieve 3 nominations until Jennifer Lawrence broke it in 2013.
50 years. That's incredible.
That is a span of 50 years. That shows you the magnitude of her stardom at that young age. She was statistically one of the most successful actors in history.
But despite the box office, and she was huge box office, right up there with Liz Taylor and Audrey Hepburn, the critics weren't always kind.
No, they weren't. There was a skepticism about her. Maybe because she was so beautiful or because she had been a child star. They often dismissed her as a machine-tooled studio product. They thought she was too polished.
Which brings us to the Harvard Lampoon story. I love this because it shows a side of her personality that the tragic narrative ignores.
It is a great moment. In 1966, the Harvard Lampoon named her worst actress of last year, this year, and next.
Ouch! That is academic snark at its finest.
Brutal. But instead of ignoring it or getting angry, Natalie Wood showed up.
No way!
She flew to Harvard to accept the award in person.
That is a power move.
It showed her resilience and her sense of humor. She proved she was in on the joke. She disarmed them completely.
I love that.
She wasn't this fragile porcelain doll. She was a woman who could take a punch and laugh about it.
But even with that resilience, the cracks were starting to show. By the mid-60s, the pressure of carrying films for 20 years was mounting.
It was. She was filming a movie called Penelope, a heist comedy. And she started breaking out in hives.
Hives, like stress hives?
Severe hives, anguish. She later said she was rolling around on the floor in agony, and the director thought she was just resisting the film.
Her body was literally rejecting the work. It's like the butterfly incident again. The body reacting to the trauma of the performance.
It was a physical manifestation of burnout. She had been working nonstop since she was 4 years old. So she did something radical.
She pulled the ripcord.
She paid the studio $175,000, a fortune in those days, to buy out her own contract. She fired her agents, she fired her managers, she fired her lawyers, she cleaned house.
She fired the handlers. That must have been terrifying.
It was an act of extreme independence. She took a 3-year hiatus to focus on therapy and herself. For a star of her magnitude to just stop, that was unheard of. But she realized that if she didn't stop, the industry would eat her alive.
But when she came back... Oh, she came back, 1969. Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice.
This is the film that bridges the gap to new Hollywood.
It's a comedy about sexual liberation, wife swapping, the whole counterculture thing. It's very 1969.
Exactly. And seeing Natalie Wood, the queen of glossy 50s melodramas, in this cynical, modern, adult satire, it was a revelation.
That must have shocked people.
It did. It proved she could be funny. And it proved she understood the way the world was changing. She wasn't stuck in the past.
She wasn't a relic. She was evolving.
And she continued to push boundaries later in her career.
Yeah.
In the TV movie The Last Married Couple in America in 1980, she actually used the F word in a scene.
Natalie Wood dropping an F-bomb, that feels significant.
It shattered that clean image forever.
Yeah.
She was playing real, messy, adult women. She also won a Golden Globe for the TV remake of From Here to Eternity in 1979. She was finding a new groove in television, taking roles that allowed her to be a mature woman, not just an ingenue.
And she was filming a sci-fi movie called Brainstorm right at the end, too, which, tragically, became famous for all the wrong reasons.
Yes, Brainstorm was meant to be her big return to theatrical films. But before we get to the end, we have to look at the private life that was fueling all this drama. Because if her on-screen life was turbulent, her off-screen life was a hurricane.
Let's talk about the men, specifically R.J. Robert Wagner.
It was the romance of the century, according to the fan magazines. She married Robert Wagner when she was 19. They were the golden couple, both beautiful, both young, both famous.
But it fell apart in 1961, and the rumors about why, they are persistent.
They are. Multiple biographies and accounts suggest a devastating reason for the split. The story goes that Natalie caught Wagner in an extramarital affair.
But not just any affair.
The accounts suggest she caught him with another man.
That would explain the suddenness of the split and the silence around it for so long. In 1961, that would have been a career-ending scandal for him.
And it devastated her. She'd attempted to move on. She married a producer, Richard Gregson, had her first daughter, Natasha, but that marriage also ended in divorce.
And then, in a twist that nobody saw coming, she goes back to Wagner.
The remix. They remarried in 1972 on a boat, ironically, and had another daughter, Courtney. It seemed like a fairy tale reconciliation. Love is better the second time around.
But it sounds like the same tensions remained.
The sources suggest they did. Underneath the reunion, there were still issues.
But it wasn't just Wagner. I mean, she dated Warren Beatty, Michael Caine, even Jerry Brown, the future governor of California.
She was connected to the most powerful men in Hollywood and politics. She moved in circles of immense influence.
And there was also an FBI agent. That's a strange detail.
Donald Goodwin Wilson. He claimed, and this is years later, that he had a 4-year affair with Wood during her second marriage to Wagner. So the image of the happy reunion might have been just that, an image projected for the press.
But there is a much darker secret from her past that she carried with her, a secret that puts the politics of Hollywood into a really grim perspective.
Yes.
The rape allegation.
This is something that was whispered about for decades, but only recently brought into the light by her sister, Lana Wood, and biographer Suzanne Finstead. It reframes her entire experience of the industry.
The story is that when she was a teen, around 16, the Rebel era, she was raped by a powerful actor.
The details are horrific. Lana Wood claims it happened at the Chateau Marmont during what was supposed to be an audition. She says it went on for hours. Natalie came home disheveled and traumatized.
And for years, the name was withheld. It was just a powerful actor. But in 2021, Lana Wood finally named him.
She named Kirk Douglas.
Spartacus, one of the kings of Hollywood.
And here is the truly heartbreaking part,
Yeah.
the part that connects back to the butterfly incident. Natalie didn't go to the police.
No.
Her mother, Maria, reportedly told her to keep quiet.
Suck it up.
Essentially. The fear was that if she accused a star as big as Kirk Douglas, her career would be over. The studio would blackball her. They would protect the male asset.
So she was forced to swallow that trauma, walk on set, see him at parties, and pretend everything was fine.
For the rest of her life.
She was a child soldier in the studio system. That's what it sounds like. It puts her hysteria scenes in a totally different light.
It does explain the depth of pain she was able to access in films like Splendor in the Grass. She wasn't just acting. She was channeling a lifetime of suppression. She was screaming for real.
So you have this woman who has survived the studio system, survived abuse, survived career lows, and reinvented herself. She is 43 years old. She's filming Brainstorm. And she decides to go on a weekend boat trip to Catalina Island.
November 29, 1981. This is the date that overshadows everything else.
Let's set the scene on the boat. The Splendor. It sounds claustrophobic.
It's a small group in a confined space. Natalie Wood, her husband, Robert Wagner, Christopher Walken, her co-star in Brainstorm.
Who rumors said Wagner was jealous of.
Right. And the captain, Dennis Davern. That's it, 4 people.
It's a volatile mix, and alcohol is flowing.
A lot of alcohol. And we know there was a fight. Robert Wagner later admitted in his own memoir that he and Natalie argued that night. He was angry about her career focus, angry about Walken. He smashed a wine bottle on the table.
And then silence. She disappears.
Wagner says she wasn't there when he went to bed. He assumed she took the dinghy to shore to get away from the argument. Her body was found the next morning, a mile away, floating near the inflatable dinghy.
Now, the original ruling was accidental drowning.
Correct. The coroner at the time, Thomas Noguchi, theorized that she had been drinking, maybe tried to board the dinghy to leave or secure it because it was banging against the hull. slipped, hit her head, and drowned. Hypothermia played a role.
But that never sat right with the people who knew her, especially her sister Lana.
Lana was adamant. Natalie was terrified of dark water. She couldn't swim well.
She could swim.
Not well. And she had a deep-seated fear of it. The idea that she would essentially put on a nightgown and socks and try to take a dinghy out alone in the middle of the night. Lana said it was impossible. It went against every instinct she had.
And there were witnesses nearby, right?
People on a nearby boat reported hearing a woman screaming for help in the middle of the night. "Somebody please help me, I'm drowning." But no one could locate her in the dark.
That's horrifying.
It adds a layer of horror to the event. She was alive in the water, calling out.
The case was closed for decades. But then in 2011, it cracks open again.
The captain, Dennis Davern, came forward. He admitted he lied to the police originally.
What did he say really happened?
He painted a picture of a rage-fueled night. He claimed Wagner was jealous of Walken, smashed the bottle, and got into a screaming match with Natalie on the rear deck of the boat.
And crucially, Davern claims Wagner prevented him from searching properly.
That's right. Davern alleges that when Natalie went missing, he wanted to turn on the searchlights and call for help immediately.
As you would.
He claims Wagner told him not to. Wagner allegedly said, "Leave her there. Teach her a lesson."
Chilling. Teach her a lesson. As if she were a child being disciplined.
That is the allegation. And based on this new testimony and a re-examination of the evidence, the coroner actually changed the death certificate in 2012.
It no longer says accidental drowning.
It now reads drowning and other undetermined factors. That shift is monumental legally. It means they can no longer say with certainty it was an accident.
And the bruising. That was a major point of contention in the new report.
Yes. The 2013 addendum to the autopsy noted significant bruising on her arms, legs, and a scratch on her neck. The forensic analysis suggested these injuries might have occurred before she entered the water.
Which points to assault.
It is consistent with being assaulted or held down. Because of this, in 2018, the investigators named Robert Wagner a person of interest.
But no charges were ever filed.
No. Without a confession or definitive forensic proof linking someone to the act, it remains in legal limbo. A mystery. But the cloud of suspicion has never lifted.
It is the ultimate Hollywood noir ending, but as we promised at the start, we don't want to leave her there in the water. We need to reclaim the narrative.
No. We need to pull back and look at the legacy, because if you stop at the death, you miss the triumph of her life.
When you look at her filmography Miracle on 34th Street, Rebel Without a Cause, The Searchers, Splendor in the Grass, West Side Story, Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, she is literally tracing the history of American film.
One critic called her our sexual conscience on the silver screen. She embodied the confusion, the repression, and the eventual liberation of American women over those 3 decades. She played the girls who were afraid, the girls who went crazy, and eventually the women who took charge.
Her daughter, Natasha Gregson Wagner, has said that the focus on the death has completely overshadowed the life's work. And she's right. We fixate on the victimhood.
She is right. We lost a terrifyingly good professional. We lost the woman who gave us the heartbreaking vulnerability of Deanie in Splendor and the fire of Maria in West Side Story. We lost a woman who fought for her name, fought for her roles, and fought for her sanity.
So as we wrap up, what is the big takeaway here? How should we remember Natalie Wood?
We should remember her as a survivor. She survived a revolution in her home country before she was even born. She survived a predatory stage mother who tore up her butterflies. She survived the brutality of the studio system that owned her. She survived the transition from child star to adult icon. She survived assault. She kept working, kept evolving, kept fighting for her identity.
It's a testament to her strength. She wasn't frail, she was steel.
And here's a final thought to chew on. Consider the industry that created her. This system took a 4-year-old, changed her name, manipulated her emotions, covered up a sexual assault by a superstar when she was 16, and then, well, the circumstances of her death involved powerful people, changing stories, and a lot of silence.
It feels like the system protected itself from start to finish.
Exactly. If she had lived, if she had continued to evolve into that fearless woman she was becoming in the 80s.
Right.
Consider this. She knew where the bodies were buried. She knew the secrets of the studio system because she had lived them.
Right.
Would she have become the ultimate whistleblower on old Hollywood? Would she have burned the whole house down?
That is a fascinating what-if Natalie Wood, the whistleblower, the woman who finally told the truth.
We will never know, but we can certainly appreciate the fire she left on screen.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to this deep dive into the life of Natalie Wood. Look her up, watch the movies, see the work, don't just read the autopsy report.
It's worth it.
We'll catch you on the next one.